every story has a start. Every story has a beginning. And the beginning of the TaKumTA story happens to be standing right across from here in the studio. Somebody who should never be a stranger, and that is Mr. Ted Kessler, the founder of Camp TaKumTA, is in the studio with me this morning. Good
morning.
I half expect to see Wade Walker walk through the door any moment now. You never know, but welcome.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate it. I've been listening to you all week here, and it's, boy, memories come back beyond belief,
Isn't it amazing how nothing's changed?
Yes, it has. Your decals out there when they answer the phone are much bigger. The writing is much bigger, so it's a little harder. I know just that problem as you're getting old.
Yeah, we've a couple of things. We've gone green.
Yes, I noticed that.
All the pledge forms are on computers now.
Yeah, well, you've gone a long ways.
It's pretty high tech.
You know what? Going a long ways, it's still for kids.
It is for kids.
It's for kids, and that's what it's all about.
So you were the founder of this camp 35 years ago.
Well, it was, way back when it started, it's really funny. It was an idea because our son had cancer. Deb and I, our son Todd had cancer, and we sent him to a place that we heard of that was for kids with cancer in New York,
right,
over in Rochester. And when he came back a kid instead of a patient. We sent him right back that same summer.
Wow.
To a second session over there, and we go to pick him up over in Albany, and the bus come in, and there's only about 6 kids on the bus, and our son wasn't there.
Oh, no.
They all had the driver pull over a couple blocks early, and they got out just to give their parents a hard time. And this kid is back, and that's what it's all about. That's all what camp is about.
So you're telling me
back.
That camp began because you and your wife got pranked by your own son.
That was
perfect?
Probably that was a start. Yes, it's happened for 35 years out of camp. Pranks that's a part of camp. But,
yeah, it is.
Camp is something it's unexplainable. And I retired 5 years ago, but I'm still there. Not at camp, but I hope to get back into it. But just the idea that these kids, you look at the kids, then they come in there at 7 and 8 years old, and they look at you, they're so scared, they don't know what they're going to get into, because we tell them they can't call mom and dad if they have a problem.
That's right.
By the middle of the week, they don't even know who mom and dad was. And by the end of the week, if you call mom and dad, you'd be in major trouble. Or if they want to stay an extra week, they're having the time of their life.
Right.
And that's what it's all about. Kids, making sure these kids get a chance to grow up and be kids.
You've seen a lot of these kids reclaim their childhood, their childlike personas, because when they're going through all this cancer, they become much older and much wiser than they probably should be at 7, 8 years old.
But their world narrows so narrow,
right,
into the disease. The disease controls them. Their times are set where they have to be at the hospital, their treatments and everything else. But when they come to camp, those times are still there. But the meantime, they're kids again. They're out playing ball. They're in the pool. They're playing tennis. They're doing everything that mom and dad says, no, you can't do that. You're sick. And these kids begin to believe in themselves that they can do it. And that's what it's about. That's what camp does. It puts their heart back into them, puts their strength back into them, puts their ideas back into them, that they're kids. This disease called cancer is just something that's, it's not real. Yet it is real. It's something that, if it's not taken care of, could take their life. But it makes their life. And I've watched these kids from 7 years old. They graduate from high school. They go on to be parents. It's amazing. You just watch, and their face is always, there's that glow that you saw at camp. It's always there, no matter how old they get. It's there. These kids, that glow is just something you can't change. It's amazing. There's no way to express it, what it does for these kids. And, if you're sitting there today saying, Camp TaKumTA, what do they really do at these places? We don't know even. We're there. We don't know what we do.
It's magic.
But it's magic. It really, really makes something special for these special kids. And I know I had the privilege of overseeing all the camps worldwide here for about 15 years. I was at the organization called Kool, and it was children's camps all over the world. They were in England, Australia, and all over the U.S. and Canada. And when I first went to that organization, we were in South Carolina, Deb and I were, and we were at a meeting in Charlestown, and they said, "Where are you from?" And I says, "Well, we're from Camp TaKumta, from Vermont." Is Vermont in the U.S.?
Yeah, right.
That was the first question I got in South Carolina.
Y'all in that New England state.
Yeah, we're all up there towards Canada. Well, it was really funny. Before we got out of that meeting, I ended up on their board of directors and ended up treasurer of the thing, and then eventually become president of the organization, oversaw all the camps worldwide. But, Camp TaKumta, though, from not anybody knowing where it was, even where the state was,
right,
become one of the top camps in the world. You know why? Just because of the people who support these kids.
Yeah,
made it that way. They're the ones that turned this around and made it so these kids. I mean, these kids come from everywhere, New York and all over Vermont and stuff. But they come from different communities, and all of a sudden they're the highlight of the community.
Yeah, they are, and they take that love and that magic back with them into their hometowns, and that makes a big difference.
They do.
Founder of Camp TaKumta, ladies and gentlemen, Ted Kessler in the studio with us this morning. We'll talk to you a little bit more in a couple minutes, okay?
All right. Thanks,
all right. It is cool to send a kid to Camp TaKumta for Christmas, 863-1051, or toll-free from Vermont and New York, 1-800-501-9565. When I walked through the door this morning, it's funny, I came in, I took my coat off, I was messing around out in the kitchen for 5-10 minutes. If I had known you were here, I would have run down the hall faster. Camp founder, Ted Kessler. We haven't seen him in a while, and he's here in the studio with us this morning. It is so good to see your face in here.
Oh, thanks, John. I really appreciate it. What you guys have done for camp over all these years, raising this money for these special kids. Just no way can we say thank you.
All we do is press the buttons and yap. Yeah. It's the listeners.
It's the listeners. It's the people out there that reach in their pockets. It's for these special, special, special kids.
There's something about camp that's a little different than other camps. I mentioned it yesterday. Camp TaKumta is one of the few places where kids go where they make friends, and some of those friends won't be back.
Won't be back.
Yeah.
That's the sad part. Over the years, we had, there's been an awful lot of kids that we lost.
And the list continues to grow.
And it'll continue. And we just hope and pray they find a cure for this lousy disease.
Right.
But, just having these kids come, and even if we've had kids, I can remember when hospital says they don't have the week to live.
Right.
And I said, I'll take them. No matter what, we'll take them out there. And these kids' parents picked them up at the end of the week. It was a short time later, they were gone. But they had the week there. They had the time there. It was such a special time that you could see the glow in their face. And I know you know who I'm talking about, but I won't mention any names. But we had a mother that come, and she had never let her son more than 10 feet away from her.
Right.
And she was a person that was he had Down syndrome as well as cancer.
Yep.
And when she came in 2 weeks ahead of time, and she says, I may let him come, but here's what you got to do. And she brought me a book about 3 inches thick of all the stuff, how you had to take care of this young man. I said, okay, we'll do that. Turned around, she drove out, the book got thrown in a desk somewhere. Never got looked at again. But that young man was there, and in the beginning, really, really, he had a hard time starting, but he got into it more and more. And one night was the first night we ever had the ropes course.
Yep.
At night, 9 o'clock we started.
Night ropes.
And I allowed her to call, because we don't allow any phone calls to kids. She can call me and ask about it. And she called me at about 8:30, and she says, I hear they're having nighttime ropes course. I said, yeah, they are. She says, what's my son doing? I said, well, he's out picking night crawlers. We're going fishing tomorrow. And then at 10:30, I send her a video of him going down the zip line.
In the dark.
In the dark. And she never had let him more than a chair height off the ground.
Right.
Never. Well, after that, there was no limits on it, what he could do. And to this day, she glows when she hears the word Camp TaKumta, because what it did for his life. And that's just one story. There's thousands out there like that.
And they continue to grow. I mean, what you started here 35 years ago has grown into, and everything that you had in your head as a vision of what you wanted camp to be, I think has
multiplied 1,000 times,
and has been fulfilled. All the facility is there, and it's just waiting for these kids. And it all started with your dream, and it's happening. So,
well, that's what the whole thing is about. It'll never change. These kids are going to have a place.
Yeah.
As long as there's cancer, they're going to have a place in Vermont, and it's going to be Camp TaKumTA up in the islands. I don't foresee that ever changing. How many years from now, long after we're looking at the roots growing down
okay.
Instead of watching the grass grow up and blowing in the wind,
yeah,
there's going to be a place for these special kids due to these people reaching deep in their pockets and giving some whatever they can to these special kids.
Ted, I know you have to hit the road because you've got deliveries and things that you've got to do as part of your other world, but thanks for coming in this morning. Thanks for sharing. And thanks for getting this whole thing started 35 years ago.
Remember our first meeting? We all looked at each other. You got to be crazy. You think we're going to raise $1,000?
I know.
But that's another miracle.
I'll never forget 20 years ago, 20 years ago, you and Wade coming into the radio station to pick up the check for the $7,500 that Rocky and I raised together. And you said, so what are we doing next year? And that. And here we are 20 years later.
That's right. It's its own best generation, this camp. This camp really takes care of itself. Thanks.